Hello, this is John Ricciutti at Radmer Studio 21. And my guest today has come up from a location undescribed to tell me about his story. He's written a book entitled Witness. It's the life and death of and rebirth of a mafia madman. Robert Borelli was a former associate of the Gambino family, and he's found redemption through Christ. And he's here to tell me his story today. Robert, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you taking the time away from your job and your undisclosed location.
Well, thank you, John.
To come and visit me.
It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Really, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You've written a book entitled The Witness, and it's by yourself. You co-author with Scott Hunt, and he is somebody who came into your life when you wanted to write this book. A witness. I guess I could ask you first why the witness, but I want to start with your childhood. You grew up in Brooklyn.
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Yes.
Normal parents.
Normal parents, as far as normal goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of that generation.
Yeah.
Our kids will talk about our generation.
Exactly.
Your father was not an associate of anything.
No, it's a hardworking guy. My mom, a hardworking woman, raising at that time four children, and then another child came about 8 years later after me.
So, how does Robert Borelli, which is not your real name, but that's a name you took when you later on.
Yes.
So in order, if you want to know what the real name is, you got to buy the book.
Yes.
Okay. There's the real names in the book.
Yes.
And pardon my cold. So you're a kid growing up in Brooklyn, and what happens?
Well, it was a tough neighborhood. You know, it was racial in the respect of Italians. You know, so we didn't call it racism, but we just said you stood with your own kind, sort of. That's how I was taught. Italians stood with Italians, Irish stood with the Irish, so forth and so on. So neighborhoods were segregated in ethnic groups. So me being Italian, lived in an Italian neighborhood, and it was just a rough neighborhood. My neighborhood really goes back to Mafia days, back into the 30s. So it was kind of just part of the culture of our neighborhood. So fighting and the Mafia was always there, even before I was born in my neighborhood.
So that was just part of what you did?
It was part of how I grew up, yeah.
Right. And then would you fight your way to school and way you ran home from school?
Well, what happened is I went to a Catholic school, and it was in a Black and Hispanic neighborhood. And the public school that the Blacks and Hispanics went to, those that didn't go to Catholic school, was behind my house. So we had to cross paths just about every day going back and forth to school. So there was racial tension, fights going on, and so.
And that's what you did?
To me, it was a way of life. I didn't know anything else.
So what happens then? I know I read your book. I read all the author's books. Okay, so how did you don't have a broken home? Your father's not an associate. How did you get to be? Where does it begin for the Gambino family?
Well, let me just simply say, in my neighborhood, the Mafia culture was already there in the neighborhood when we moved into it. So
it was there from the...
It goes back to the 30s. You have a movie that was called Murder Incorporated, with Anastasia and Happy Maione and the Dasher. So these people were established in that neighborhood and known in that neighborhood, and their relatives grew up in that neighborhood with us. So it was the Mafia was kind of there already. I taken to that there because I'd seen like 3 types of people in my life growing up. One was my mom and dad, which were very hardworking people, but always had a hard time making ends meet, raising 4 children, sending them to school, clothes, and the whole 9 yards of supporting your children. And at an early age, I really didn't want to take to that. I'd seen a lot of arguments in my house over finances that we just couldn't afford to, whatever it was that we might have needed at that point in time of our situation in life. Then you had people that would be drunks. We used to call them hobos or bums in them days, and they would be passed out in our hallways. And
they didn't live there?
They didn't live there.
They just came there, crashed?
They just came there, and passed out, and they fell on the staircases. We used to have to walk past them, and I definitely didn't want to get involved with drinking or drugs, whatever it was that these people were messed up on. And then you had in my neighborhood social club, and the social club was these guys, and I didn't know they were mafia at the point in time, but they seemed to be getting all the respect in the neighborhood. I mean, everybody looked up to these guys, and they protected the neighborhood, and I admired that there. And they had nice clothes and nice cars. They had the things that I would have wanted in life, so I gravitated towards them a little bit as growing up as a young kid, doing errands for them, and you know, just little things, stuff like that. And then I was a pretty tough kid in the neighborhood. You know, I was short, so some person said I had a short man syndrome or something like that. But anyway, so I had to establish myself. Didn't want to get picked on or bullied, so I fought whatever I could fight. So that they kind of admired that part of my life when I was a kid.
Did you like fight a lot in school?
Well, you know, like I was raised Roman Catholic, went to Roman Catholic school, and my school was in a black and Hispanic neighborhood. And the public schools, if they didn't go to Catholic schools, the black and Hispanics would go to the public school behind my house. So we would have to cross each other's paths just about every day going to school. And of course, it was racial tension at that time, and we just would fight. And so there would be fights going back and forth to school, and that was just a way of life. So I didn't know anything other than that, because at an early age, that's what we did.
So did you stay in school, or did you get expelled, or?
Well, no, I stayed in school until the 8th grade.
That's
Because
it?
I had no choice. If it was up to me, I probably wouldn't have, but you know.
Is that when you just stopped going to school?
Probably at the age of 15 years old, I stopped going to school, playing hooky. And then at them days, if you were 16, you could get a worker's permit, and then you could leave school and go and get a job. So as soon as I was able to get out of school at the proper age, I did. I was 16 years old. But I really don't remember much of the 9th grade, and I very seldom went anywhere near school at the 10th grade.
So how did you get involved with one of the five, the Gambinos being one of the 5 major families, right?
Right. Well, like I said, there was the social clubs, and you really didn't know they were mafia. They didn't come out and say we're the mafia or anything like that. They were just well-dressed guys, protected the neighborhood, and they would have like card games and stuff like that going on. And I would go in, you know, during the nighttime, and I would make sandwiches for them when they were playing cards, and I would get a couple of dollars in tips and stuff like that. So I gravitated towards that. They liked me. I was just one of those likable kids and a little tough, so they admired that part of my personality. And little by little, I just started staying with them. So.
Who's the guy that threw up all the money?
Well, you know, there was one time I remember Gene Gotti came into the club, and I mean, I still can remember exactly how he was dressed. You know, he had on brown suede shoes, brown sharkskin pants, an Italian knit, and he came in the club in the middle of the daytime. Nobody happened to be there, and I was just in there. And he, you know, I don't know what happened, but he just had a whole bunch of money just threw it up in the air, and I was admired about that because all of them were $100 bills. So I was very impressed by that. So once again, to see that there kind of money being thrown around.
Did you take the money? Did you have to give it back?
I helped him pick
Just
it
for
up.
show?
Unfortunately, he didn't give me any.
He didn't give you. What club was it? No, wasn't the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club?
No. This was the club before they even opened up that one. That one was in Queens. This one was right in my neighborhood on Fulton Street, right off of Eastern Parkway.
And what was the name of that club? Is it still there?
I don't even know if it had a name. No, it's not.
You're not
there
protecting
no
it now, are you?
No.
You just don't want to tell me the name.
No, I just don't know if. I don't think it had a name. I could tell you it was covered black windows. You couldn't see inside of it.
Okay.
And the guys used to put their chairs outside of it. And I would hang out with them, shoot pool, you know, things like that.
Okay.
I was a light kid. I was liked as a young kid. I don't know how much now, but.
I can't speak on that.
Okay.
So then what happened?
Well,
how did you get they embraced you? They took you
they
in.
embraced me, took me in, and then, you know, once they moved, the club closed down, and I started going to other neighborhoods. And there was, like I said, no matter where you went in my neighborhood, there was guys that were associated with organized crime, and so I went from one place to another place, and I just was doing the same thing. So at the age that I could quit school, and I started hanging out with them, and then I ended up getting a legitimate job later on. And then on my way from work one day, I met somebody, and it happened to be somebody's son that was a made guy. And, you know, that was very interesting because there were very few made men in them days.
Really?
Yes.
Why? Why is that?
Because the books that weren't open
Did
for
they lower the standards?
They didn't lower the standards. I think they might have raised them. But anyway, it just, the books weren't open. There was a certain period of time where the books of guys being introduced or members becoming members of the mafia, the books were closed. So at a certain period of time. So I think they didn't open up again until the 70s. I think it was from like the 50s or early 60s to the 70s. At that period of time, nobody was being made at that time. So this one guy was, and I was around his son. And I think, if you want to call it the claim to fame, or my introduction into being an associate of the Gambino crime family, came when an accident happened. Well, I won't say it's an accident, but anyway, there was a fight. Happened. Somebody got killed. I was wanted for it. This guy's father hid me out for a year and a half. I ended up staying with another club on Eastern Parkway and gravitated towards those guys. I got arrested for my first arrest at the age of 20 years old. It was for 2 murders and possession of a weapon. But most people thought I'd never see daylight again. And I didn't think I'd see daylight again. And we just went through the process of how things go and got an attorney and got me out of the mess.
Who got you the attorney?
My friends end up getting me an attorney. They end up meeting somebody from Mulberry Street that knew this good attorney, and got him. And of course, you know, I had to pay him a little at a time and run errands and do things to get money to pay him. And that was kind of like my introduction, because then they would take me as I was a stand-up guy. I didn't give anybody up, you know.
Never ratted on your friends.
Never ratted on my friends.
Kept
my mouth shut. Stood in jail for about 3 or 4 months before I got bailed out. When I got bailed out, they would bring me to Mulberry Street and they would parade me around and they would introduce me. This is Robert. He's one of our upcoming stars. Just like Goodfellas.
Did you? To me, I think it's the best mob gangster movie ever made. My opinion. Did you know any of those characters?
I did. I knew some of them in real life. Now, of course, I didn't know the actors, but I knew who they were portraying in the movie. And I knew Jimmy Burke. I knew who is Jimmy Conway in the movie. I was close with his son later on in life. Me and Frankie Burke got close. I knew Tommy DeSimone. When Tommy DeSimone disappeared, I went out with his ex-wife for about 7 years after he was gone. So I was very familiar with the...
Is she portrayed in the movie?
I think she is, but there's very little of it, and I don't know if they use her name or not, but I don't remember the whole movie itself.
Yeah. I always notice a lot of you guys always don't remember something. Yeah. If I ask you a question, you're like, I don't remember, I don't know.
Well, I really don't know.
No.
I'm just letting you know.
No, you gave me an opportunity to say something that I think we could appreciate. So you knew those characters, or you knew that the real people.
Yeah.
And you were kind of like, but you also got some bad habits along the way.
Well, I did, you know.
Like how were they making all their money at the time?
Well, when I started making money, it was through crap games, which is dice games that we used to run, and I would work them and get paid, and then get tips if they made money and stuff like that.
Do you have to pay the police off?
You know, I really didn't get involved with that part because I wasn't one of the owners of the game, or I didn't have a piece of the game, so that was beyond my scope. I just went there, worked for a couple of hours, made a couple of $100, whatever it was that I was making at that time. Running numbers, doing numbers. Me and another friend of mine so I started running numbers for them before, you know, they wanted me to take charge of the numbers and just give them some money out of the profits. And I did that for a while. So I was making money, numbers, gambling. That had a lot to do with gambling is what I was involved with.
And then you developed another habit.
I did. Well, I had a gambling habit. That's one problem. One of my problems.
One of the stories in your book about your... I can't believe you weren't killed.
I was at a crap game, and then I put this in the book too, and it seemed this gentleman lose a lot of money. I was kind of curious how you could lose that kind of money and not want to kill people. You know what I mean? So it was a lot of money, especially back in the 70s. And I was impressed by him. He had a brand new Jaguar. He asked that I could go out and get more money for him, and he just had
How much money
in
did
his
you lose?
You know, I don't want to. I'd say anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000, and it was probably within about maybe 40 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was impressed by that he had more money in his car, number one. And then when I went to his car and seen it was a brand new Jaguar, that even impressed me more. So I inquired about him, you know, what does this guy do? And he said he's from Harlem, he's a big drug dealer. And for me, in my head, man, that's what I want. I want them brand new Jaguar. I want, not that I want to lose that kind of money, but I like to have it to lose and it won't affect me, you know? So I got involved with dealing drugs, and before you know it, I was doing more than I was selling, and the people that I owed money for the drugs wasn't getting paid, so my resources was, I wasn't getting anything, and long story short, the addiction grew on me, and then I couldn't afford cocaine anymore, and crack cocaine came around.
Cheaper.
It was a lot cheaper to get high off of, and I had a lot more control over it than I did the cocaine for a period of time, but eventually I got addicted to it and really became really bad with it.
First page of your book, you dedicate the book to your mother. Your mother always forgave you.
My mother did. Let me just say this because it's very important. I did not write not one sentence in that book. The book is about my life, but H. Scott Hunt is the one that wrote everything. And I introduced him to some of my family so he get a take of what it is from Brooklyn, because he's not from New York, you know. And he's the one who said, I have a surprise for you in the book, and I didn't know what it was. And he knew my love for my mother and my situation with my mom when she passed away, me not being able to be there for her. And he said, I dedicated the book to your mom, and I thought that was a nice thing for him to do for me.
Before you became the person you are now, you had to do a lot of things. You had to dig down, and to write this book,
Yeah.
you had to dig within your soul.
Yes.
Because if you're going to do, and I interviewed other authors, and I've interviewed other members of the crime family, as you know, and you have to really, there's things in your life you like not to think about anymore, but you had to dig down in order to do this. Because I read the book,
Right.
as I said several times. What was that like to like things you'd like to have forgotten?
Well, let me just say this here. I was a cooperating witness. That's part of why the book is called The Witness. And being involved with the federal government for like 13 years, maybe 14 years, going over my life all over again with them on a constant basis, maybe 2-3 times a year for that longer period of time, made me look at my life, repeating it over and over and over again, and just realized how much of a terrible person I was.
You were really a hateful person.
I had a lot of anger in me. I mean, I didn't see it at that time. I
You
just
were not-
knew it was who I was.
Yeah, you just didn't care who you hurt. Were you
No.
involved with anybody at the time? I mean, with a woman or another
There
partner?
was a couple of girls in my life. Like I said, Tommy D. Simone's wife was part of it at one time of my
She
life.
was not a good person now.
She wasn't a bad person. You know, at that time, partying was a big thing. Going out to discos was a big thing. Me fooling around with girls, her maybe getting involved with some guys. You know, that was just kind of the thing that we did. So I don't want to say that she was a bad girl. I just think that she was caught up in almost the same things that I was caught up in. I wasn't a nice guy either, so.
How did you become a witness for the government?
Well,
And did your associates around you know that you were going to turn?
at that time they didn't know. I was in Rikers Island. There were some cases I was wanted. My friends already got locked up in Florida, and for cases that we had in Florida, and they were already locked up, and I found out somebody said that your name is in the newspaper, and I said, what's it for? And they were looking for me. I was actually, at that point in time, strung out on crack cocaine, living off Atlantic Avenue and Rockaway Boulevard is where I was hanging out. Didn't really have an own place for me to stay. I didn't have my own apartment or anything. Just living off the streets and wherever I could fall out or find a place to sleep, that's what I would do. Like
One of those
someone's
people that
houses.
used to lay in your apartments.
Just like that. You know, it's ironic that I look back on my life, all the things that I didn't want to be is the things that I became. But, so that being said, the government finally caught up with me. The state of New York, warrant officers came and got me. They found out where I was, got locked up. And I'm in Rikers Island. I know I'm not going to get bail.
What's that like? What's
Rikers Island is probably, from my understanding, from what I heard, is probably the second worst prison in the United States. It's not even a prison really, it's a jail, but it's about 1,100 inmates. And it's an island, and the place that I was in was called HDM, Men's House of Detention, MDH, Men's House, MHD, and Men's House of Detention. And basically there's a lot of murderers and stuff like that, people waiting to go to trial. So it was pretty rough in there. But what I did was I needed to find, like when I get locked up, my first thing is, okay, how do I get myself out of the mess that I got myself into? So I really relied on a lot of my friends and my family.
You got out of stuff.
I did. I got away with a lot of things.
Yeah.
I did. And now I depended on people to help me with that, but now I'm not getting any help, so I'm making phone calls, seeing who might want to help me. And I had left my daughter a while back. She was born in 1993. And I had an argument with her mother when she was only 7 weeks old.
You were never married to her?
Never married. I was supposed to get married, but I went and got high for about a month, and they couldn't find me, so that wedding went down the tubes. But anyway, my daughter was born, and 7 weeks later, I had an argument with her mother. I walked out, and I said, look, you know what, I'm just gonna go get high one more time. I was cleaned up for a while, and I went and got high, and I never came back home, nor was I welcome back home because of my addiction. So that's how I wound up in the streets in '96. That's how these cops ended up catching me for the cases that were pending against me.
I have to ask you, was there a transitional point that you went from petty crime to ultra-violent crime?
Yeah, you know, we used to go into bars when I was younger, hanging out with this wise guy's son. And of course, you always want to make a reputation for yourself. You know, respect and the reputation was big. You know, especially if you wanted to get more involved with you know, stepping up the ladder, so to speak. And we used to go into hang out in bars, and if people disrespected us, we would beat them up, and sometimes bloody them up. This one time we had a fight in a bar, and this guy got cut up pretty good, and we didn't pay any attention to it. About 6 months later, my friends called me up. I was at somebody's house. They called me up and they said, hey, I think we're going to have a problem in the bar. And they would always want me to be around because I was kind of like the tougher guy. And they said, come here, we might need your help. So I run out of where I was and I run to the bar. When I open up the door, a whole bunch of guys just run at me. So I'm getting ready to fight them, but I see there's so many of them. So I run. It happens that they catch me, they put me on the floor, but they're waiting for this one guy that I hurt to come and finish the job on me. It happened to be a police officer, an off-duty cop, had to be driving by on Woodhaven Boulevard, and he gets out, he sees what's going on, and he takes his gun out, and he says, stop, you know, and all that. So they get locked up. I go to the hospital. I was cut up a little bit. Go to the hospital. From that point in time in my life, I made a mental commitment to myself that from now on, if people were going to try to hurt me or disrespect me, I would kill them. I won't let them come back and hurt me or try to kill me.
And they knew that?
I think that's what made so many people be afraid of me, is the fact that they knew they just couldn't beat me up. They'd have to be willing to kill me because they know that I'd be willing to kill them. And I'm not proud of any of that, just to let you know that there, but that's just how I knew how to survive in the street. I had to make it known that if you mess with me, there's a chance you're going to get killed.
In the book you talk about a stabbing incident, or there was an incident out front of a club that you were accused of.
I was accused of it. That's the incident we spoke about a little bit earlier, when the guy, my friend's father, hides me and my friend out, and we're on the land for about 1.5 years. That was the kind of claim to fame of getting involved with them. I mean, because now you have a button guy that's representing you and asking people to look out for you.
A button guy?
Yeah, meaning a made man.
Okay.
You know, in them days we used to call them buttons.
And how did you know that they were made men? You just
Through word of the
the
mouth.
word,
Through
the
word
word
of
got
mouth,
around,
yeah.
and you didn't touch that person.
From my understanding, when I was groomed early, a button guy, you had to get permission to kill.
Did you ever sit on any of those meetings?
I was part of it, but I didn't sit at it. When a friend of mine got killed, and I was looking to kill the guy that killed my friend, and they had a sit down over it, and the sit down was that I couldn't touch the guy that killed my friend.
In Goodfellas, D. Simone kills Billy Bats. Did that happen? Go get your shine box, go and win your shine box.
I don't think it happened in that way.
Was it over that? Was it a made man that he killed?
From my understanding, he killed somebody that was close to John Gotti. Just randomly did it, not thinking about anything. Not sure the whole scenario why he did it. I have ideas of it, stories that I heard, but I don't know for a fact, so I'm not going to say why I thought he did it. But he ended up losing the decision, and then, from my understanding, his own people were the ones that executed him.
They never found his body.
They never found his body. In the movie, they show you a funeral for him, but no, they never found his body.
So what was Rikers Island like?
Well, it's not like it was the first time I was there, but for that particular reason why I was there, you got to remember the situation I'm in. I was strung out on crack, lost a lot of respect from people. A lot of people disassociated themselves from me because of my addiction. So my plan now is like every time I get locked up, how do I get myself out of the mess I got myself into? So I have a system. What I try to do is get a good attorney to get me out of the mess. But this time I don't have any money, so I have to call up people and ask people to help me. And then the other thing I want to do is, I know I'm not getting bailed out, so I want to live as comfortable as I possibly can while I'm in Rikers Island. And with that meaning, I need to get money in my commissary, because you can go to a store, buy cigarettes, coffee, whatever you need to just get you through some of the time that you're going to be serving. So I'm calling up people, I'm asking for people to help me out, and I'm getting a lot of rejection. So I called up one friend of mine, who's this girl, and we're good friends, and I called her, and she says, why don't you go read your Bible? And okay, for me it's a brush off, because where am I going to find an attorney or money in my Bible, because that's what I'm needing right now. So I just didn't say nothing to her, and I let it go, and before you know, we hung up the phone, and that was finished. And a couple of months later, probably a couple of weeks later, maybe 2-3 weeks later, my daughter's mom's allowing me to talk to my daughter over the phone.
You were never married to this person?
I was never married. So I'm talking to my daughter, and she's crying, and I say, Brianna, that's her name. I said, Brianna, why are you crying? And it's something like either, why don't you come and see me, or why haven't you come to see me? And it just touched me. You know, if I was out on the streets, I would have probably went and got high, or would have got a drink or something to medicate myself, because I didn't want to feel all that guilt and shame of walking out on my little girl's life, and not knowing that I was like blocks away, and I'd rather get high than see my own little daughter. So I started just crying, but I didn't want the people in Rikers Island, the inmates, to see me crying. It's a sign of weakness. So I slammed down the phone. I ran back to my cell. And you know, I was raised Roman Catholic, so I knew of God. I didn't have a relationship with Him, but I knew of a God, and I just cried out to God. I said, I can't live with this pain. Either have somebody kill me or change my life, or vice versa, have somebody change my life, or have somebody kill me. But I really just didn't want to live anymore. That's the point of time that I was at.
When the police picked you up, you said you were high on crack, or you had been doing crack cocaine.
I just crashed, and I was
Okay,
passed
so did you
out.
have to go through some withdrawal? Isn't there a withdrawal?
There is
I
think
know.
there's a physical withdrawal, as well as it is mental.
Okay, so they just put you in Rikers, and then that's the kind of withdrawal you go through.
You just, yeah.
Let me ask you about two things. I'm going to go. I digress, so you just bear with me.
Sure.
Henry Hill. Well, kids are infatuated by Henry Hill. What's the real character? I know he's portrayed by Ray Liotta in Goodfellas. But you knew Henry Hill?
I never even heard of Henry Hill. I might have seen him around, but my understanding, because I was not part of that family, so I was not involved in their,
You were
what
part of
they
the
did.
Gambino family.
Yeah, was a different family, but I knew of a Tommy DeSimone, I knew of Jimmy Burke, I knew of Frankie Burke, I knew of a couple of other guys that were around them. Henry Hill, in my opinion, is just my opinion now, I don't think he was all that movie portrayed him to be.
He made himself into that character.
I think
Which Scorsese
he
did.
put himself a little bit more than. Let me just put it this way: I can't picture Jimmy Burke, who has so many other people around him, asking Henry Hill to go and kill somebody. I just can't think of it. I mean, that's just my opinion, though.
So that was
Unless Jimmy was going to kill him right after he did the killing. To be honest with you.
Before I went, and the other thing I want to ask you about is Gotti. When you told me when they were making Goodfellas that the Scorsese's or whoever he used came to you guys and asked them to be bodyguards for the actors. Is that true?
It wasn't for that movie. It was for a different movie years back. So there was in New York, there was kind of like bouncers. It was more unionized. They came to Wise Guys for a lot of that protection in New York. So if they were to come into New York and to be protected a little bit, they would ask us to send some kind of guys to be around them. Yeah.
And they would come to the club and say, "Do you have any guys?"
Well, they would do it through sources.
Oh,
but
sure.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Okay, what Gotti's aura? I mean, he was on the cover of Time magazine. He was done in a portrayal by Andy Warhol. How did this persona develop? I mean, you knew Gotti, John, and his family.
I grew up with his younger brother Vinny. His brother Billy used to go out with my sister. Jeannie used to go be part of my older sister. They used to hang out together on Fulton and Rockaway. So I knew of them, and I knew some of them, especially Vinny, because we were about the same age. He's a couple of years older than me. So we hung out a little bit together. John I really didn't know personally, but as I started getting involved with the Gambino crime family, I started knowing and hearing more about Johnny. If I seen Johnny, I'd say hello to him. He knew who I was because I was always in trouble and in the neighborhood, so he heard my name a lot because a lot of things that trouble the neighborhood, people like that hear who it is that's starting a lot of trouble, and that was kind of me a lot. But Johnny, I think was, in my opinion of it, and from what I seen of it, was very charismatic type guy. So Johnny was just out there. He wasn't the guy that sat behind the desk, and he was kind of like out there in the streets, and he, I guess, defied authority. He really didn't care.
And that did not sit well with the old guys.
Well, from what I heard, because I wasn't up in that kind of class to sit down with the older guys and talk about these things. But from what I hear, things that trickled down was that a lot of them weren't happy about it because it was exposing a lot of organized crime that really didn't need to be exposed.
You could never become a made man because you're not 100% Italian.
That is true.
That's tip number 2.
They changed it back in the 70s, from my understanding, and you could have been half Italian, but your father had to be Italian. What means the opposite.
They lowered the standards.
They did. As a matter of fact, from what I heard recently, they're thinking about putting them back up. That you have to
I
be
don't want to be
Italian.
politically correct.
So that's what I heard.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Do you ever live in fear of your life?
Today, if I told you not at all, I'd be lying to you. So I'm not going to tell you not at all. Every now and then, I think about how I would handle somebody like me if I was back in my days. And I probably wouldn't appreciate it, but I don't think I would go running looking for somebody like me right now. I have a different persona of my life than most people have. I'm a born again Christian now. I don't think I'm in a losing situation. I believe God has called me to be a witness for Him today.
Thus the name witness.
That's why the witness is a witness for the government, a witness for Christ now. That's why we thought the good appropriate name would be the witness. If I don't think about it, sometimes I'll think about it, but most of the time I just, for my own personal intellect to get me through sometimes, is I don't think I can lose, because if I get killed, I know I'm going to heaven, and from what I read in the Bible, it's a lot better than where I am right now. And if I don't get killed, I do what God has called me to do. So I really believe that God has called me to be a witness for Him, and hopefully bring hope into a hopeless world right now.
So, and I want to talk more about that because I want to talk about the Kenyon Street Boys. But I also want to ask you about, and I'm fascinated by it myself, the Witness Protection Program or Witness Protection Plan. Because I know what I saw from My Blue Heaven, the movie My Blue Heaven.
Yes, I did. I seen it too.
And of course, Goodfellas. How does that work?
Okay.
You're in Rikers. You've been told to go read the Bible. Was that your mother? Was that your daughter's mother that told you to go read the Bible?
No, it was somebody else, a friend of mine.
Okay. So, how did you get into Witness Protection Program? How's that happen?
Okay. Let me we'll go back to Rikers Island. I'm not getting any help. I'm getting very frustrated. I'm going back and forth to court. My lawyer's never showing up in court, so I'm sitting in bullpens practically from morning till nighttime.
He's not showing up
for no reason. He's not showing up, and I'm not even. Because I didn't pay him, and nobody's helped me to pay him, and I'm never going in front of the judge. So the case is not getting anywheres, and it was just getting very frustrating for me. It was getting really hard for me.
And how long had you been in Rikers at this time?
Probably about 4 months now. Probably about 4 months, and I don't think I seen the judge once in 4 months.
And the food's crap.
Well, the food, it's
prison food.
Exactly. You're not getting steak, that's for sure, or raviolis. But anyway, so I was getting frustrated. I was looking at my life, and I was examining myself and saying, you know, I knew a while back that because of my drug addiction and how far I really went with the drugs and how low I went with the drugs, that I would never get to any place where I used to be as far as with the Gambino crime family. There couldn't have been that much trust for me anymore. So I knew I wasn't going to get where I wanted to go. So I might have got a couple of odds and ends things to do, but never go where I wanted to go. So then I looked at my addiction, and I kind of like first felt like a sense of complete hopelessness when I'm Robert the crackhead, and I'm probably going to die Robert the crackhead. So I didn't see any hope in my life. And then I knew the government was trying to get in touch with me to see if I was going to testify or if I would be willing to help them.
Feds?
The federal government, yeah. And I evaluated everything, and I thought this was my only shot that maybe I would have to change my life or do something different with my life. And it kind of brought a little hope to me, so I decided to cooperate with them. That being said, from Rikers Island, they transferred
How do you do that? How do you do that? Is they send somebody to talk to you and say, here's the deal?
Not right away. I laid up in Rikers Island probably for another 6 weeks, and then finally they had me shipped because the case was in Florida, so I had to go to Florida, and the prosecutors were with them, and the feds, then the FBI in Florida was the ones I had to talk to.
And these were charges that were brought against you in
against
Florida?
Florida, yeah.
Right, and so you went to Florida.
So I went to Florida.
What were they, like drug charges?
No, they were racketeering charges. This is
Okay.
where there was about, I think, 9 of us. Those guys were already locked up, and that was the one that they were looking for what I was telling you about, 96. 97 is when I ended up getting locked up. So I went there, and they told me this is what we'll do. We'll recommend you, because they can't guarantee you get the witness protection program. They said, we'll recommend you for the witness protection program if you help us. We'll downgrade your guidelines. You won't have to do 10, 15, whatever it was that I might have been facing. And I thought it was an opportunity for me, so I agreed to cooperate with them. And then I had to do my time. So after I cooperated with them...
What was it, attorneys that they bring in?
They gave me an attorney, because I didn't have an attorney. So they had given me an attorney. They worked out the process of a deal. I laid up for about another year.
What, in jail?
In jail in Florida, and
what was it? What kind of jail was it?
well, the first one I was, you know, I share sometimes this in my testimony when I talk to people about my life changing, how God's grace and mercy came upon me and changed my life. But what happened is that you would think that you're cooperating with the government, and now you got God on your side also, things are going to get better. Don't always happen that way. When I first got into the program, when they first said they'll propose me for it, and I was going to cooperate with the government, I was locked up 23 hours a day. in a cell. So I didn't get to be around anybody. I was constantly locked up. Then people found out where I was, so the government had to move me, and they moved me into a dormitory.
People found where you mean?
The guys that were locked up.
So they were afraid that they might kill you?
Yes, they were afraid that they would try to do something before I could testify against them, so they sent me to another facility. But I seen God's hand in all that there, to be honest with you, because the facility I went to, they had 2 Bible studies a week, so I was getting Bible studies and getting really moved.
Where was the second facility, in Florida?
It was in Florida. It was in, oh man, I can't remember the county, but Indian River County Jail was the name of the jail. So that's where I was, and then I had to get sentenced. I got sentenced, and then after my sentence,
And you had to testify against the people?
they all took pleas. Once they found out that I was going to testify, they all took pleas on the case, so I didn't have to testify in that case. But the promise of the witness protection program still stood, because I couldn't go back to the neighborhood anymore because I was still a threat to testify. You know, I still was, in their eyes, considered a rat, so I still was in danger of harm coming to me. So from there, I went to, they sentenced me, and I got put into Sandstone, Minnesota, and it's a secure jail it's called the WITSEC program, for Witness Protection Program. And I stayed there until my time was up, and then they came and they got me out. The marshals come and get you, and they send you to a place, and I didn't know where I was. I know I flew into
How come you didn't know where you were?
because they flew me to, I think it was Maryland, and then they put me in a van that you can't see outside, so I don't know where they're going. And they drove maybe for about 45 minutes, and I wound up when they opened up the van, I wound up in a tunnel, basically. And then there's stairs, and I followed them. They put me in a room, and even they have a backyard, but the walls in the backyard are so high you can't see anything sideways. You can only see straight up.
Right.
So I don't know any idea exactly where it was that they brought me to. And that's a place where they hold you for 3 or 4 days to evaluate you, where they're going to place you, make sure that they're going to place you in a place that nobody knows who you are, nobody knows you, you don't have any relatives or friends that are going to be there. They evaluate your psychology, psychologically, to see where you might fit in society, what might be the best place. So they do all this testing.
And your accent certainly fit in perfectly where they sent you.
I felt like God was giving me a taste of Abraham. We'll send you to a foreign land, you know. But anyway, so that's just how it went. So one of the things, the first thing they do is they say, okay, what do you have? You know, because when you come out of jail, you come out with stuff, you know, pictures of your mom, dad, you know, my daughter at a young age, whatever it was that I had, and they take everything from you. You don't have
I'm just curious, were they all male attorneys that you dealt with, or were they women?
Well, later on, I came some women in my life. Not in my life, but in...
No, I know what you meant.
Okay, just want to clear that.
No, I know
All
what
right.
you meant. No.
So, yeah, there was some, but basically, at that point in time, they take everything from you because you can't have anything from your past.
Take everything, you mean?
Everything.
Everything, pictures,
Everything.
clothes?
Everything.
Okay.
I got 34 credits for a college for Bible studies, and I lost all that credits. So, because you can't have anything from your past. Nothing that might trace you from the new identity they're going to give you from your old identity. So all that's wiped out.
So how did you get the name Borelli?
Well, they say you could keep your first name. You could change both names if you want, and I didn't think that would be a good idea. Somebody called me John, I probably wouldn't answer to them. So they say keep your first name, change your last name. So they would come and I would give them a name, and then they would go out. I don't know what they did with that name, but they would come back and say, no, that's not good. Come up with another name. So I did that again, and they go out and they came back. But this time when they came back, I was watching an episode on MASH, and it was the first time I ever seen this episode where there was Dr. Borelli comes into the MASH unit because he's a specialist, and they need a specialist to do a heart transplant for this wounded soldier. So when they came and they said that name doesn't work anymore, neither. I seen the Dr. Borelli, and God only knew that I needed a heart transplant because my heart was terrible. And I said Borelli, and they went out and they came back and they said, okay, that's your name. So I got the name Borelli.
So you became Robert Borelli?
Robert Borelli, yeah.
And that was it?
That's it.
So while you were in their new location, your mom passed, and did you get to go to the funeral?
No, I was not allowed to go to the funeral. I didn't know she passed away until 3 days after she passed away. Because I was in the program, I could not go. They brought her back to New York. She lived in Florida at that time, but they brought her back to New York for the funeral services, so I wasn't allowed to go. So that kind of bothered me a lot. And, you know, once again, I questioned God. I said, how could you give me this new love that I never knew about? And the person that I wanted to give it to the most was the person that I hurt the most, which was my mother. And I just felt God saying there's other moms and dads you can go and minister to or give that love to. And from that, I started doing a nursing home ministry. That was the first ministry I started doing, but that was Road Christian Church. I went to nursing homes every day, not every day, every week, Saturday and Sunday. I would do something different for them every Saturday to give them something to look forward to every other week. And then on Sundays, I would minister God's word to them. I would preach.
What was the one thing you remembered the most about your mother?
Well, you know,
How did you find out she died, by the way?
the marshals ended up getting in touch with me and let me know that my mom had passed away. That's what I'm saying. It was 3 days afterwards.
And what was your first thought?
Well, of course, it was. I just really didn't know how to cope with it. The fact that I wasn't there. There was a little bit of a guilt part because I knew that my mom had cancer before I went into the program, and there was the guilt part of should I not go into the program, just go as a son to my mom once I got released. So me and my mom spoke a little bit about that, and her thought was, you need to take care of yourself. Don't worry about me. And my thought afterwards was, I would probably do more harm than good because she'd constantly be worried about me. What's going to happen to me? Am I going to get high again? Or somebody's going to come and kill me? So I kind of swayed myself, and through her words, I went into the program. So that the last time I see my mom, the last picture I have of my mom in my head was the last time I seen her, and that was through a glass window when she came to visit me when I was in Indian River County Jail. So it's not the best picture you want to have of your mom. So it was hard on me. It was very hard on me.
And you said your mother forgave you.
You know, after I got saved and I was in Sandstone, Minnesota, I just felt the Spirit of God saying, you need to make amends with some of your family. So I wrote letters to just about everybody, my brothers and sisters, asked them to forgive me for not being the brother I could have been, and, you know, the uncle I should have been to their children, just not being part of their life.
And the father you should have been?
The father I should have been to my daughter, but at that point in time, I wasn't, you know, but just bringing out how much damage that I really did, realizing that I wasn't really part of my family's life. I was so self-centered, you know. But I didn't write my mom a letter, but I called my mom on the phone, and I spoke to her, and I said, you know, Mom, I gave everybody a letter, but I never told you. And I just want to let you know I'm really sorry for all the things I did, and I hope that you can forgive me. And my mom said, only thing, and I believe it was so Christ-like, is my mom said, I forgave you the moment you did it, man. And that made me just feel so much at peace, but it just reminded me of the love of God in my life, that all the things that I did, that God was able to forgive me for all the things I did. The hard part I had was trying to forgive myself for all the things I did.
So you became more immersed in the church
Yes.
that you became a part of. And along the way, you met your wife.
Yes.
How did you meet her?
Well, there's a friend of mine from New York that was still keeping in touch with me. I know, you gotta remember, I'm in a foreign land and I have nobody around me, and it's kind of lonely. So this one person, this girl, would allow me to call her, and of course I had to use the government to do it, so this way they can't trace the call from where I'm calling from, so they don't know where I'm calling from. And we would just pray a lot, and she got saved. I ministered to her while I was in jail, and she gave her life to Christ. So she was working in a church also, so she was a saved Christian. So we would pray for a soulmate for me, and she found, like, about maybe a year later, she met this girl who was a born-again Christian also, and she just had this thought, you know, she had just lost her husband. I'm looking for a soulmate, and she's talked to that girl, said, hey, if I gave you I gave somebody your number, would you would you want to talk with him? So we dated on the phone for 5 months before I met her. So I never knew what she looked like, she never knew what I looked like. But the amazing thing was we fell in love with each other's hearts, just talking with each other, getting to know each other, and not so much a physical attraction, but a love for one another's heart, what our desires were. And then when I finally did met her, I proposed to her, and she said yes.
And where'd you meet her? She came to here?
She came to where I was. I wasn't supposed to do that. It was against the wishes of the program, so I didn't let them know that. And I made her, she's still with my family minister. She wasn't allowed, I wouldn't allow her to stay with me. You know, we didn't want to do anything that was not according to God's will for our lives. We didn't want to start out on the wrong path. And for 10 days she was there, and before she was ready to leave, I cried out to God. I said, what do I tell her? I mean, she's leaving. See you later. Have a good trip.
I'll call you.
But yeah, I'll call you. Whatever.
Call you
What am I supposed to say to her? And he said, you need to ask her to marry you, because you'll never find someone to love you the way she'll love you. And
And really put up with it in the book.
and I did, and she said yes. And now my wife, I have to tell you, knew of me but didn't know me.
Oh, she knew your
She heard a lot of stories about my old reputation, and I'm not sure she knew that that was the guy she was going to meet. But once I told her all about me, then she put it all together, and it was still hard for her to believe that she married the guy that she heard so many bad things about.
Oh, yeah, that creep.
But she also realized that that was no longer that guy anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with the Kenyon Street Boys?
A friend
That's
of
an
mine
interesting
in
part of your
2012 just had this desire, and he felt God. He's another born again Christian that I was in relationship with, as friendships with brothers in Christ. And he had this desire. He felt God put in his heart to go to Kenya, and he didn't know why. And he was asking for people to come with him, go on a mission trip. So he had asked me, and my first response really was in my own head is, now I'm in a foreign land. This is a mission trip for me, just staying where I am. Never mind sending me out to Africa. But I ended up saying yes, and we went there. And we went there for a whole different reason. We went there to teach men how to be godly men and fathers and husbands. And so that's what our mission was, to go there. And we had some conferences set up that we go and we speak to these men in Africa. And then there was one pastor ended up taking us to this place where there was probably about maybe 8 or 9 kids there. And I said, well, who are these kids? And they said, well, this is where they live. And I tried to find out more about it. So they didn't have families. They were just living in the fields. And I seen donkeys and, animals there with them. And this is where they slept. But I seen this one kid. I mean, I seen all of them, but this one kid stood out the most.
He's the one with the picture in the book.
He's the one in the picture in the book, yeah. And I didn't know that until after I seen the book. And I just looked in his face and was kind of like how I felt when I was in jail. Robbed the crack out of him, die, robbed the crack it. I sensed that in his eyes looking at him, and I knew that God was telling me, you don't just want to preach and tell him how much I love him. You need to show him how much I love him. And I had money on me, and I gave it to the pastor. I said, when we leave here, you need to just take them out to get a meal, because I was inquiring about them, what goes on in their life. They don't have parents. Either their parents threw them out, their parents died. It was a whole, each one had a different story, but basically they were left to them. And I'm talking about 8 years old to about 14 years old. They were young kids with nobody.
So you saw your whole life.
So it just broke my heart, man. It just did break my heart. And I promised them that I won't forget them when I went back to the States. And the pastor came to me and said, I wish you wouldn't have did that, because they hear that so many times from other people that come here, and they're still in the fields, and nobody has helped them. And I said, well, I promise you I'll do so. So I went back to the States, and I just started a ministry, and I called it the Kenyon Street Boys Ministry. And what we did the first year, we were able to send them $300 every month, and they would go to the church, this pastor's church, and they would get a meal a day for 5 days a week anyway that we could afford. And I did that. And the second year, we were trying to get more involved and do more things for them. The second year, I think we got some of them in some housing, 1 or 2 of them into some housing. But we had to raise up in Kenya, and we had to raise up more money, so I was sending them $500 a month. I was still short $500 because they needed $1,000 to do all the things I wanted. Some of these kids got into schools. and started getting plugged in, and some families now, seeing that the church was embracing these kids, and some of the moms and dads came into their life and took some of them home with them, brought them back home. And now I'm still sending 500. I do fundraisers to raise money for these kids, but I know God is telling me that I need to get them out of the environment that they're in and get them into a safe house. So now I'm trying to raise, and I think the first thing we need is to raise about $55,000 that we could build a home and get some of them at least in that home and then work it from there. So that's what the mission is. So besides the books, anybody that purchases a book, $1 of that book goes automatically to them. And through the ministry that I do, just to let people know, it's a 501c ministry, it's a non-profit ministry, it's a tax write-off for anybody that wants to donate anything, they can use it for their tax write-off. And 92% of that money, so if you give me $1,000, $920 goes to those kids, and just $80 goes, there's no salaries involved, it just goes for maintenance of doing fundraisers and having money to do fundraisers for administration fees.
How could somebody make a donation?
They could go online to my website. It's called robertborelli.com, and they could pull up the Kenya Street Boys thing, and they'll see there's a donation box.
Okay.
They could do
And
that.
we'll put that on the lower
Yeah.
part.
That is there. They could go on my website. There's ways of doing it. There's an address on my website. They can mail a check to me. Whatever way they do it, if they want a tax write-off on it, they need to let me know where to send the tax write-off and what name or who's donating the money.
I don't want you to respond to what I'm going to say.
Okay.
If you go to a foreign country, you would need a passport.
Yes.
You were able to get a passport?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I didn't know I was able to because it's the only way I could have went to Africa.
Okay.
I didn't get a passport.
Okay. Because I'm thinking, you know.
I thought the same thing. I didn't know if I was able to get one. I don't know how all that works. But this is what I could tell you. My past is completely wiped out.
Right. So you're.
There's no recollection of my past. If you look
No.
up anything under Robert Borelli, my social security number, or anything, you'll just find me living from 1999. I just wish it would have worked in the natural so I wouldn't be so old. I would be younger then, 1999 until now. But it didn't work that way.
I want to ask you one other question. Before I ask you where you can find your book, I want to ask you another question. In Goodfellas, there's a scene where they're in prison, and their food's coming in and liquor. Is that made up?
No, it's not made up.
Really?
It's not made up. I didn't do it, but we had people that did it. They would get pots, fill it up with water, and they would get stingers. They were called stingers, so they would get just wire. They would get like a plug it in, and then take out the extension and put it in water, and it would boil the water. It took a long time, but it would boil the water, and then we would steal pasta from the kitchen, and we would make sauce, and we would make pasta, and we would give it to each other. But also we had ways of getting food in that.
They came in. They came in like salami and prosciutto.
Yes, every Christmas we had a Christmas party.
Did you really?
We even had some liquor.
You got liquor too?
We got liquor.
Just
too.
like in Goodfellas?
Just like in Goodfellas.
Could you get anything you wanted?
I think there was possible. I know there was one guy that said, if you wanted a gun, I'd bring you the pistol one day, the bullets the next day. But we weren't really interested in that. But I don't know if he was joking around or serious. But the thing is that he'd be willing to do anything for the price is right.
And that's, I'm not going to ask you what prison that was in. I'm just.
No, because
I'm not going to ask you.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
No. Okay. Scott Hunt put the book together. You brought him the pictures. I mean, he put the whole thing together.
It took 3 years to write this book, but not just to write it, to pray about it, to make sure that what we were doing was not trying to do anything other than to bring hope into people's lives. Because if you go to the book, whether you believe in Jesus or not, and I'm hoping that you do, and I'm hoping this book will lead you that way. That's
I do, by the way.
The main motive
And I
of
believe,
me, and I appreciate
that. And I believe
that.
that you have changed your life.
But if you could see, this is the thing. When Scott did the beginning of the book, I was not too keen about the growing up, the childhood stuff. I was more the action guy. That's just me. I like the action, you know. My heart has changed since then too. But I think the key thing is a lot of people, especially parents, they try to change the behavior. They see the behavior of the child and they try to change the behavior of the child. But they never go and find out what might be causing that behavior. My sister read this book and she said she cried. And when she called me up to tell me, she said, I didn't even know that when you were that young, you were in so much pain. My grandfather passed away. All these things that I think that people don't deal with. I was close to my grandfather. All these things that people don't understand, that kids don't know how to deal with those things.
Right.
So you act out on it. So you're trying to change it. I don't want you to be a bad kid. I want you to be a good kid. But nobody tries to find out what might be causing that kind of life change in the kid, why he's acting out that way. You just want to change the behavior part of it. So I think that's a good read, you know, for that part of it, that you can see how your kids might be getting into trouble. And maybe counseling might be a good thing. So maybe if I would have got counseling, I don't know, but maybe if I would have got counseling about dealing with my grandfather's death, maybe I would have dealt in a different way instead of being violent and going out there.
Yeah, you never know what event affects your life.
Exactly.
Never.
Exactly.
Never.
So, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No.
I let's finish what you were going to say.
I'm saying, and that's kind of the reason why I've gotten so many good reports about the book. Because the book is self-published, a lot of people don't know about it. That's why I am so appreciative of you putting me on your show to talk about the book, talk about the ministry I do, because that is who I am. That's what I do now. That's just my life.
When you go on, I did see you on the 700 Club. When you go on speaking, are people fascinated by your story? Do they want to know more about? I mean, it's what makes you kind of interesting. Your past. I mean, and your New York accent doesn't is easily recognized.
Well, you know, you get different responses, different people. What I always want to do, the first thing I let them know is I'm not here to glorify my past, I'm here to glorify my Jesus. That's the first thing I let people know. I'm not trying to promote who I was, I'm trying to promote who Jesus Christ is in my life. That's the first thing I try to let people know. And the book, I think, will lead you that way, give you that opportunity. But you get different responses from different people all the time. Some people are fascinated and they'll come and they'll ask me more about my past. And then the whole key of everything that I do is just to show people the grace and the mercy of God. You know, mercy of God is that if you look at my life, I didn't get what I deserve. I got mercy. I really should have been in prison the rest of my life.
You really were.
So it's the mercy
you really
of
were a
God.
creepy guy.
Exactly. So that's God's mercy. And then if you look at my life today, God didn't give me. God gives me what I didn't deserve. Gave me a beautiful wife, friends, family, still loving me and caring about me. Things that I don't deserve, you know, God has given me. So you can see the grace of God in my hands. So you can see the mercy that He didn't give me what I deserve, and the grace that He gave me what I did not deserve, which is a new life.
So where can one get the book?
Well, it's not in bookstores, let me just make that clear. Hopefully someday it will be, but they're not. You go to barnesandnoble.com, you can go to amazon.com. If you want Kindle, you can go to Kindle, you can go to Smashwords and get an ebook.
Nook?
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble, Nook.
Yes.
Yes. That's
So you go to those places,
Where I
you
got
go to
it.
my website, which is robertborelli.com. You go on the website, there's information about how you can purchase the book also. There's information about me on it, so it's a lot of reading to do. You can catch up on a lot of things that are going on and things that we're pursuing. And I believe there's an address there that you can even get in touch with me.
What would you like to do going forward?
Well, for what I believe God is telling me to do this year, my main object or my main goal for this year is to get these kids a home to live in. So I'm trying to raise that kind of money. I'm hoping that through that there and a way of getting that done, more speaking engagements would open up, that I could get finances, you know, for love offerings or whatever people are paying me, whatever it is, so we could put it towards getting these kids a new home. So,
Have all the letters you sent out, have the people forgiven you?
yes. they seem to change in life for me. That's the other part about writing the book is the people who I'm around right now can't believe that I was that former person. And the people that I was around back in them days can't see who I am today. So writing the book, I think, brings them both together. People can understand where I was and where I am today in both parts of my life.
Would you like to go back to New York?
Not to live, to be honest with you. Not to live.
Just to visit? And
I would go to visit, maybe somewheres down the road, try to get a little bit closer to my daughter.
do you work on that relationship?
I'm working on that relationship. It's a lot better where it was. I sometimes hit bumps in the road, so to speak.
Everybody has kids, hits bumps in the road, so.
But the main thing is my daughter right now is going through a tough time in her life, and I wasn't there when she needed me probably the most, and she can't understand that. But I am thankful that I wasn't there for who I was, because she would have been raised up in that kind of culture too. So I'm grateful for that part of it.
No.
But she just can't see that yet.
She will.
Yeah, I believe so too.
She will.
I will.
You've been an incredible guest.
Well, thank you so much.
I've had a lot of education talking to you, and quite frankly, a lot of fun talking to you. You're most interesting, and I wish you a lot of luck, and I wish you a lot of success in achieving what you want to achieve. With Robert Borelli, Radnor Studio 21 on location, this is John Ricciutti. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the show.